do about 20 to 25 deals a month. For the first month from July 1st to August 1st, I thought it was just a scam. I didn't get any deals, nothing under contract. Nobody wanted to sell at a deep discount. Everyone wanted full retail. I was like, man, I've been hoodwinked. That was my first deal, was August 1st. I looked at that piece of paper, and for the first time I had proof of concept. The next week I locked on my second deal. The next day I locked on my third deal. A couple days after that I locked on my fourth deal. And I ended up leaving August with about $250,000 worth of contracts under my belt.
Dillon Cass, welcome to the DealMachine podcast. Give us an overview of your business in 30 seconds.
Thanks for having me, David. So we run a wholesale operation here out of Connecticut. My office is here in Hamden, Connecticut. And we do about 20 to 25 deals a month.
Woo!
Yeah,
Dude, that's great. Not a lot of people achieve that level of success. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're cranking it. So I would say most of those, like 80% of those are wholesales. And then the other 20% are just going to be the flips or the buy and holds, or whatever we can make sense of. You know, we have a lot of exit strategies, you know, wholesale, novation, buy and hold, flip, short sales, seller finance, subject to. So we've done it all. So, you know, we crank it out over here.
Yeah, did you start doing all those stuff, or did you really start with one?
I started off with Pace Morby and his Subject to group, and that was like my main thing. You know, I was like, I really want to do Subject to and seller finance, but I never picked up momentum with that. You know, it just never really caught on. The environment I'm in Connecticut, it's just not a Subject to, you know, real estate market. Everyone has a lot of equity. You're not going to get into deals with no money down. I think that worked great for Pace Morby with the VA loans and the FHA loans down in Arizona, but it's not a thing up here in Connecticut. Everyone has $200,000 worth of equity. No one's buying anything on FHA or VA loans. So what really caught on for me was wholesaling. That's what you know, picked up in a hurry for me.
Well, that's amazing. When was that you ended up getting started?
I don't really know how to answer that because I was half committed for a very long time. Dating back to, you know, about 2 years ago, but the first time I like fully decided to commit 100% and just burn the boats was probably about 13 months ago.
Tell me about that half commitment. What was the other half of yourself committed to?
I was working full time as an engineer in New York City. So I got my degree in engineering and I was working as an engineer in New York City. And you know, it was tough because you get home from work at 5 or 6 and you only have so much time and so much resources. So because it was just me hitting the phones, and me, you know, doing everything on the back end and all that stuff, I was never really able to pick up that momentum. And, you know, month goes by, 2 months goes by, 3 months goes by, and you don't see results. And, you know, you kind of just say this doesn't work, or you just move on from it and you focus on, you know, the rest of your life, which at the time was working full time as an engineer.
Yeah. So how many calls do you think you'd make? I mean, you get home at 6, right? So would you got a couple hours to make some calls?
Yeah, I mean, when I was half committed, you know, I'd just I had a dialer, you know, an automated dialer, so it called like 3 people at a time, and I don't know. It was tough. It was tough because I was the one cold calling. So half the numbers were wrong. You know, it wasn't like a list vetted out by VAs. It was just me straight cold calling. So most of the numbers are wrong. Most of the people told me to F off. And, you know, I probably spent from 5 to 7 to 8, so like 2 to 3 hours a day after I got off work calling. And that lasted for a few months and, you know, didn't really get any traction. And um, I something changed, and like I said, about 13 months ago, I finally decided to fully commit to this.
What caused you to decide to then scale the business to where you're doing? I'm sure you got a team now. I'm sure you got.
Oh yeah, I got a big
people
team.
working.
Yeah, I got a big team. I got 3 in-house acquisition guys, a full-time dispo guy. I got a transaction coordinator. I got about 15 cold callers. You know, we're cranking it. I got a full-time like assistant and then 2 girls who just run my CRM for me. And you know, we did scale it really, 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 really fast. I don't know anyone else who scaled it as fast as we did, because I'll give you the rundown of it. So June of last year, I was working full time as an engineer in New York City, and every time I drove to work, I was always in love with real estate. So I would check out podcasts, and I was checking out a Sean Terry podcast going to work, and he was interviewing some dude who was, it was like an infomercial. He was interviewing some guy about pretty much how he had this data where if you bought it, it was able to pre-predict people who are going to sell their house off market for a deep discount, and I was sold. So I pulled over on the side of the highway, and I decided, man, this is it. I thought in my head at the time that no one else had this information, that this was like um, a secret list. And I ended up pulling over on the side of the highway, and I ended up swiping my credit card, and I paid for the full year because I really thought that this was it. And that's what forced me to be committed, because I already paid for it in a full year. So it was like I couldn't back out. So that was June of last year, and I think I spent about $15,000 on data. I threw it all on a credit card, and I had all this data, and I was like, "Shoot, let's! I got to use the data." I hired out a couple cold callers, started, you know, very little marketing. A lot of it was just me on the phones, and for the first month, from July 1st to August 1st, I thought it was just a scam. I was like, I didn't get any deals, nothing under contract. Nobody wanted to sell at a deep discount. Everyone wanted full retail. I was like, man, I've been hoodwinked. And, and then August, late July rolls around. I think it was July 29th. And I remember I sent out a text to this dude in early July, and I got a random phone call, and he pretty much called me up and said, "Hey, is this Dillon?" And I said, "Yeah, it's me. What's going on?" And he said, "Man, I've been looking at your text every single day for the last few weeks, and I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you, but it's finally time for me to sell. I need to get out of this house. I grew up here, and it's just time for me to move on." And I thought, I was like, "All right, what do you want? Full retail like everyone else?"
You said that?
No, in my head, I said that. I was
Oh,
like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was so depleted.
Oh,
I
here we
was so
go.
depleted after 30 days of not getting any traction. I was like, "All right, so what do you want for your home?" And he said, "Man, I'd be ecstatic if I get 250." And at the time, the estimate was 375. I went to his house the next day, and I locked him up at 225. And that was my first deal. Was August 1st, and I looked at that piece of paper, and for the first time, I had proof of concept. And the next week, I locked on my second deal. The next day, I locked on my third deal. A couple days after that, I locked on my fourth deal, and I ended up leaving August with about $250,000 worth of contracts under my belt. And then we rolled that into September 1st, another deal. You know, Probably did 10 deals in September. October rolls it around. We're looking at October 5th, and I have 5 deals under contract 5 days into the month. And then November rolls around, and I said, "This is the real deal." And I quit my job as an engineer in New York City in the middle of November. I handed in the keys to my car, and I ended up moving up to Connecticut January 1st. And I've been in this office ever since. And we scaled it to where I was at then to where I'm at now. And I've been doing it full time for about 7 months now. And like I said, we're doing about 20 to 25 deals a month right now.
Did you change anything from the first 30 days you got nothing to then the next month where you got your second and then 10 deals?
Absolutely. I learned from every single deal. I learned from every single deal. Like in July, I remember I had 2 people who said yes at price points that would have made sense, but I just was screwing up on the sales side of sending out contracts over DocuSign, allowing them to look at it too long, allowing them to shop it around to their attorneys. The main thing I changed is I'm going in person now. I'm going to lock you up on the spot, and that's it. So anytime I did have a lead, it was locked up. So I tuned in my sales skills. I wasn't hearing maybes or no's anymore, and I kind of was able to figure out what marketing channels worked for the area I was in. What was most responsive, and I mean, that was it. That's what let the momentum going. The sales skills, and just tweaking the marketing channels, kind of expanding on what was working and kind of ditching what wasn't working.
So getting contracts is one thing, but getting contracts assigned to a buyer is something completely different. And you're explaining how you were getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 10, and then 5. Where were your buyers coming from to close all these transactions?
The first one was me. I flipped the first one. That was me. I had some money saved up from being an engineer, so I said, this is gonna be. I could have made 20 on a wholesale deal, or I could have made 90 flipping it. So I decided to flip it. Second one, I found them on Facebook. Third one, I found them at like a real estate meetup that I went to like earlier that year. And the fourth one, um, I ended up partnering with a friend of mine on that flip. And then, I mean, you go on PropStream or whatever you use, and you could just pull a cash buyers list, and I just blast them out. Facebook groups were great. Real estate network meetups were great. Um, Reaching out to hard money lenders because they're the ones that have the cash buyers was pretty good. There was a few ways, but I never had a problem moving a good deal. Never.
Yeah, Ryan actually found his first buyer on Facebook Marketplace. You sound
Yeah.
like you said one of your second or third deals, right?
Not Facebook Marketplace, but a Facebook real estate group. They're super active. Like there's big players in those groups that do 20, 25 deals a year, and they're always looking in those groups for off market deals. So I wouldn't go to Facebook Marketplace, but I would go to those Facebook real estate, investor groups.
Yeah. And you did all that original deals through cold calling, but now I know you do send a lot of mail as well, right?
Yeah, we do it all, man. We do everything under the sun. We do a little bit of, you know, uh, website stuff with the SEO and the PPC. We do a ton of cold calling, a little bit of texting, a little bit of mail, a little bit of bandit signs, um, and a little bit of door knocking.
If you could pick one, what would it be?
I love door knocking, man.
Yeah.
It's not my, it's not the most. I mean, I'll probably get one or two deals a month off of it, but it's just my favorite. Having the ball sack to go to someone's house and knock on their door and really be able to distinguish yourself from the pack who's just cold calling them or just texting them or sending out mail. Those are the biggest deals that I've had. But cold calling, we get most of our deals from cold calling, and then mail is great too. Depending on how fast you want to get that cash cycle going, mail is great because they're reaching out to you. So if I get a mailer, I know I could close that deal in about 2 to 3 weeks. Versus cold calling, it's like the timelines is going to be a little bit longer, but we get most of our deals off cold calling.
So I can't imagine that you have a lot of time to go door knocking though now, right?
Yeah.
I'll spend like a Sunday doing it. I'll do it all day Sunday. So like I'll just put it. I mean, I do have time. I can make time for that. Like I'll just spend my whole Sunday just on the road because I know for a fact if I hit on 20 to 25 doors, I'll get a deal. I will. I'm that I think I'm that good in front of somebody where if I hit on your door and you are going to sell, you will sell it to me.
How did you get so good? I mean, being an engineer, sales is not necessarily the top, skill most engineers have. And I would know because I am one. I have 2 engineering degrees.
Hey, yeah. I think I sucked at sales when I first jumped in. I was horrible. I was a doormat. I was what you would call a tour guide or an order taker, and I transitioned into creating a backbone and being stern and the biggest separator that made me a great salesperson was just investing in my sales skills, from hiring mentors and spending a lot of money on sales coaching and you know Steve Train, I think if you follow his sales process, Ian Ross, I think if you follow their sales process and you actually understand it, I think you'll crush it. I think sales is pretty easy. It's just about following a procedure and a process. It's not about being like a likable guy. I think it's just following a procedure and a process. And if you're able to do that, you'll be great.
It's cool, man. So you also probably sent your 3 acquisitions people through the similar sales training, right? Let's talk about like hiring those because I hear so frequently from people as accomplished as yourself that man, it's tough to find an acquisitions manager that sticks around a long time. A lot of businesses they struggle with tenure, right? And typically it's just because they're the wrong fit, but sometimes they're leaving to start their own business. So, well, how do you find that perfect person?
I kind of wanted to go the corporate route, hire someone a little bit more professional, hire someone a little bit older, a little bit more polished. I'm 27 years old. Uh, my first hire was a guy that just really didn't work out too well. But
Why not? Let's hear it.
he's just not a sales guy, man. It's just I can't pinpoint it. It just the outcome just wasn't where it needed to be at. I can't really pinpoint why without offending anyone, but it just wasn't where a sales guy should have been. I just
How would you know if an acquisitions person is actually doing a good job, right? It would have something to do with like closing ratio, right? Something like that, how it compares to yours.
I would say this. I think how well you speak to people on the phone, your communication skills is pretty important. Your ability to pick and prod and pick out motivation points over the phone and figure out how to distinguish someone who is a serious seller from someone who isn't, and being able to distinguish that pretty fast. So having the mental wherewithal to understand this is not a motivated seller. Let me get this guy off the phone, and then when you do have a proper seller on the phone, it's getting to that point right away. So it's like three things for me. I have it on my board here. Obviously the four pillars: motivation, timeline, condition, price. But being a good salesman is painting pictures, telling stories, influencing, and persuading. So once you're able to distinguish that this is a real seller, this is a guy who has a need to sell it cash fast, and needs to sell it off market. Being able to really pull out his strings and find out what's important to him, pick apart his motivation, and the biggest thing is create a solution to his problem. And if you create a solution to their problem, you usually get a pretty good, discount on that price.
Yeah. So another way you could say is sales is a disqualification process. It's talking with people, quickly deciding if they're actually a good candidate that wants to sell for motivation. And if not, get them off the phone. Don't waste a lot of time, right? Spend the
That's
most time with the people most likely to sell.
that's the first half of it. Yeah, the first half of it is just we have a ton of leads that come in every single day, just like I call them the players from the players. We want to talk to the players. We don't want to talk to the players. So get the players on the phone, speak to them. Make sure that we're in striking distance, because we don't want to waste our time going out there if we're not. And if you have a turnkey house that's beautiful and you have all the time in the world to sell it, I'm probably not going to be your fit. So we want to get those people, in our system. And then once they are, the second half of it to me is those in-person skills, being able to establish rules up front, being able to walk someone through a sales process, being able to, get to that closing where there is no objections. And if there is any, we're going to crush them. And just doing real strong takeaways, painting pictures, telling stories, influencing, persuading, and putting pen to paper.
Got it. So yeah, the players are kind of like your tire kickers, right? They're the ones who say,
Yeah.
"Hey, just no, tell me what your offer is before going through your whole process." And you're like,
Yeah.
"No, like we, I mean, what do you even say to a tire kicker like that? What's your go-to?"
We just do real quick takeaways. We do quick takeaways, and if they bite on them, we know that you know, maybe they are serious, and we'll dig a little bit deeper. But if they don't bite in a takeaway, it's all good. It's just not for us. So
So a
if
takeaway would be like you pulling back. You could say like, the way you're asking this question makes me feel like you may not really want to sell your house, but you want to know what your house is worth. Um, we're serious about buying your house, so we can't proceed unless we know you're really serious, right? So it sounds like maybe you're not. Maybe we should end the call. That would be like a takeaway, right? Like is that what you mean?
yeah, the first thing I ask somebody when I get on the phone with them is, "What's got you thinking about selling?" I want to know why you're selling. Because if you're not actually thinking about selling, I don't want to talk to you. So if you're actually thinking about selling, you give me a serious answer. We're going to transition to the price. I'm going to say, "Hey, what are you looking to get for it?" And let's say they say a crazy price or something silly. I'll just say, "So it sounds like you're not a serious seller. It sounds like I probably wouldn't be a fit for you. Why don't you just list it with a realtor? Why would it even be worth our time even having a conversation about that? Because I couldn't make sense of those numbers. What would it look like if you got an offer like that?" So I'm just pushing them away, list it with a realtor, go another direction, and if they pull back in, maybe it is a fit.
And one of the things I heard on a podcast early on was this guy who did a deal. First thing he said was, "Hey, I'm totally wanting to be upfront. I'm not going to be your top price, but I will be able to give you a guaranteed offer that will not fall through, that will be fair. So if you want the top price, highly recommend you go with someone else, list it with an agent. But if you want a guarantee, you want to close it in 2 weeks, you want to close it as is, you want to make sure the offer you're receiving isn't leaving you stranded, on closing day, having to start the process all over. That's me." Right. And so that was somebody told me that story. They did the deal. I almost say that every time now. And that's kind of like another takeaway, right? It's like you're being really upfront. You're not like the top price.
Yeah, exactly. It's whatever is important to them. Some people speed, convenience, that guarantee a close is super important. They're willing to take that as a trade off for price. So if you have a foreclosure in 3 weeks, you can't go with that FHA buyer who's going to outbid me by 100K because they're not going to get the deal done in time. They can't even close it out in this condition. And it's like a straight up 50-50 versus you're going to get 100% of, let's say, 200K opposed to 50% of 350K. It's like, go with the sure thing. So whatever's important to that person.
So one of the things you said at the beginning was you bought an annual subscription for $15,000 to a magic list. You kind of alluded that there's not really a magic list, but the fact that you committed was why you were successful. What kind of lists are you using now?
We dip and dabble with everything. I tried that list. I tried the straight up county records of everything that's on there, picking apart things that I thought were important. But there is no magic list. I think honestly, if you told me I could just pull a list of every single house in my county, I'd probably still get the same results. It'd just be a whole lot more weeding through. But I love, I guess my favorite list, I still love foreclosures. I love probates. I love those absentee owners. The vacant properties are always great. High equities always been pretty good.
You said you're sending out 20,000 pieces of mail in a month, potentially sometimes, right?
No, no, no. I mean, let me do the math on it. I spend about 10K a month, so whatever 10K divided by 0.75 is, what is that, like 15?
Yeah.
Yeah, about 13. Yeah. So around that. Yeah.
You can't really, there's not that many probates out there, right? It's kind of your point. It's like you love those, but you love the foreclosures, but there's not 13,000 probates in probably in your area. So you have to expand beyond some of those niche lists, right?
Well, we pull the whole state. So, I mean, maybe there is that many probates. I'm sure there's a lot in Connecticut. We pull the whole state. We don't miss out on any county. So there's a lot of probates. I mean, we just like every list, like if someone even transferred a power of attorney in the last month, I want to get in touch with you because why did you transfer power of attorney from your mother's name to your name? Maybe you're looking to sell that. So probates are great. Power of attorneys are great. Quick claim deeds are usually pretty good to go after. We like the foreclosures. Obviously, the absentee owners are great. Vacant properties are always been good. Even driving for dollars has been pretty effective. So, I think all lists are pretty good. It just depends, if you have the sales skills to lock those deals up.
Well, where do you go from here, man? You're doing 25 deals per month, which is serious numbers. I mean, your life has changed in a whole year.
Just going as fast as possible. I mean, I have no signs of slowing down anytime soon. So wherever that takes me, I'm just reinvesting everything I have back into what I'm doing, and wherever that leads me, I don't know. But I'm buying real estate for myself every month now. In the last, I mean, I'm buying a 5 unit next week. I just bought a 3 unit last week. I closed on a subject to deal single family house 2 weeks ago. I'm closing on another three family in 2 weeks. I have a whole bunch of flips going on. So I don't know. I just want to go as fast as possible and see where that ends up.
What would you say to somebody who says $400 in cash flow per month isn't going to change your life? Like, why are you buying real estate?
Because I don't get $400 in cash flow. Any property I get,
What?
I usually get 1,500 to 2,000. I think you're buying the
That's
wrong
great.
asset if you're only getting 400. I've never had that. I think if you're buying a single family house, you're probably only going to get 400. But if you're buying a bigger deal, the numbers are always bigger. And if you're a wholesaler, you have those sales skills, you're going to get the right price for your cash flow. Like that 5 unit that I'm buying that I should be closing on, in the next couple of days, that should cash flow me about 3,000 to 4,000 a month easily. That single family house that I bought subject to 2 weeks ago, I bought it at 2.4% interest rate. My mortgage on that is only going to be about PITI about 1,400. I'm going to rent that out easily for 2,600, and it's a no brainer because I got into that deal for $20,000 down. So I would just say you're buying the wrong deals. I would say you're buying the wrong deals.
Well, let me ask you this. Just being in my position, we have access to a lot of data that's not necessarily in the app yet. Is there any type of hard to get data that you've been wanting to get your hands on that you haven't been able to? So a couple examples of that would be I've talked to people who love finding distressed properties that are on double and triple lots because they can break even on the flip, but make 80,000 by splitting off that lot. So came up with a way to filter that in DealMachine, for example. So just curious if there's anything like that that maybe you just haven't been able to get your hands on.
No, I've been able to get my hands on everything. I think I pulled really niche lists that I don't think a lot of people were able to pull, and I have access to pretty niche data. I spent a lot of time just for sport, filtering out stuff like that. The only thing I really haven't been able to get my hands on that I would like to is probably people's credit scores who dropped like significantly in the last month to 2 months. If I get my hands on that, that's I've gotten my hands on everything else. You name it. We're able to track demographics. We're able to track if you smoke, if you don't smoke. We're able to track a lot of things that a lot of people don't even know about that have been super successful for us so far. So I would say no. I would say one of my edges is having great data.
What do you do with the smoking data?
Everything we call it, we text it, we mail it. You name it. We're getting them on the phone.
So you think if somebody's like a certain age and they have potentially indicators of poor health, like that's a list that you focus on?
No, I think the profile of a person that smokes cigarettes is usually a profile of a person who's going to sell for a discount after a certain age.
Got it. So you reverse engineered kind of what your experience was.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few of those things. Like, we've tracked a few different metrics, and we're able to see patterns in certain people, and that's one of them.
Ryan, what's your take on what's your takeaway from this podcast?
Well, this is all really cool. I'm fascinated that you were able to scale it and still maintain success. Scaling to me was a little bit over. Is a little bit more than what I wanted to do. Managing a team was just not my cup of tea. So kudos to you for doing that and doing it effectively.
I think a huge part of why that was more difficult for you, Ryan, is because your market and your price point, right? The average house in St. Joe, Missouri is what, $150,000?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah.
In Connecticut, it absolutely must be 400 something, right? Is that true, Dillon?
Yeah, right around there, probably 400 to 500. Yeah.
So it's got to be, he's getting 4 times bigger wholesale fees, I would guess.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So it just makes it easier when you have to do the same amount of conversations to do one deal, but one deal's worth 4 times more over there, and I think that's a huge reason why it's difficult to scale in a market that has a lower fee.
100%. You got to go in volume over there, just get into another market, or just buy deeper.
Deeper when we've seen some that we're getting $2,000-$3,000 deep as deep as we can go.
Dillon, man, I'm super grateful for what you shared on the podcast. It was super great to meet you. And I know you told me you like to send one-off mail, and you gave me a tip on how we could make our interface better for that, because right now it's designed to kind of repeat the postcard, but you want to manually send it every month. So I'm going to take that back to the team. We're always making updates to the app. If you didn't know, every month we've got a series of 10 updates like that. And so I'll be taking that to the team and getting that prioritized. So thank you for sharing that, and hope you let us know anything else like that we can do to make it easier for you.
Let's do it. I appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Where can people find you on social media? Do you have any place you want to send them?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on Instagram. It's Dillon Cass, DILLONCASS, and same on Facebook. So that's about it.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate you, Dillon, and have a great rest of your day. A very profitable day.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Thanks, Ryan.
See you, man.
Thanks for listening to the DealMachine Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please leave us a review and follow along wherever you're listening to your podcast.